Slow Sleeper Lives, I totally remember when you used to be called by Simple Bubble. Of course I remember that. Eternal Napalm says, sane people don't do that kind of shit. These people are living miserable lives, so they resort to this in order to find meaning and purpose. Well, see, there's two groups. There's two groups. Group number one is the people who create the drama on the internet to make money. Group number two are the people who are too stupid to realize that it's fabricated drama and they buy into it. And then they give those people money. I would argue they're both bad, right? Like the one group, the people who are literally, people used to say, I'm a cult leader, right? How dumb that is. They're the ones. They create a cult of hate. They create these hate groups and drama groups around someone to just continuously crap on them and dump on them because everything they do, here comes the money. So that's the most toxic part of the internet. And then you got the dumb people who follow them and believe their bullshit. So it's just equally bad in my opinion. I received a $25 tip from 1 Minute Man this morning. Thank you very much, 1 Minute Man, for the $25 tip. I appreciate that. As always, no matter what I'm doing, where I am, what content I'm putting out, 1 Minute Man supporting it, and I really appreciate that. Thank you so very much. Let's get you up on the leaderboard as the top tipper so far. And by the way, these tips carry over to the React stream. So any perks or whatever we earn via tips now, carry over there. All right? The goal is $50 every time that I stream. But in this case, this stream and the React stream, I consider one, even though they're on different channels. So that will carry over. Thank you, 1 Minute Man. Happy Sunday to you, Derek. He says it's a rainy day there. But ready for fun and festive React show. It's going to be a festive React show. I'm telling you, a lot of Christmas-themed clips this week, which is really good. I'm very excited for that. But yeah, listen, and that's the funny part. When you guys are telling me, well, didn't you hear Travis? Travis is no longer on the show. And that, no, I literally know nothing about that at all. Nothing. I pay no attention to any of it. I don't care. Like I said, since the moment those guys treated me like dirt the day after my interview and went back on everything they had said up to that point, that they were going to treat me fairly, that there was going to be a second follow-up interview where more of my story was going to be told, that basically they were going to do a decompression show that next day, no hate, but it was just going to be a nice decompression show of them playing video games, and they wanted me on as a future guest. And then once I had that interview, that I was going to be able to be a normal guest on the show, and literally 24 hours after the interview, they go back on all of that. It was all a lie, and they treat me like dirt, right? As soon as that happened, they're dead to me. I don't give a fuck about them ever again. I don't want to talk with them. I don't want to have interaction with them. I'm done. Really. And in truth, what you guys don't even know, I actually did them a solid. I'll say this publicly quickly because no one knows this story. After that fact, someone was going around and was impersonating the Sidescrollers. They had found out what the Sidescrollers' actual email address was for their show, and they were sending fake emails to impersonate them to multiple parties to try to act like they were really even worse people than they were, heinous individuals. They sent me a fake email saying that they were extorting me. Basically, you're going to come back on our show and do part 2, and if you don't, we're going to do this and this and this horrible thing. So I got this email, and I'm looking at it, and I'm like, they literally said they don't want me back on their show, but now I'm getting an email claiming they're extorting me into being back on their show. Okay? And I looked at the email address, and I compared it with theirs. It was off by one letter. Someone had used a capital I instead of an L to impersonate them. And it looked completely legit. So this is someone who had seen their emails before and knew exactly what they looked like and impersonated it 100%. Now, I didn't have to do this. I went out of my way to send that to the Sidescrollers and say, just so you guys know, even though we have bad blood, someone's fucking with you. They're trying to make you look really bad in the hopes that someone will maybe come out and make you look even worse. So I just want to let you know this is happening, and that's where we left it, and that's really the last interaction I had with those guys behind the scenes. And then after that, anything else was public. You know, the times when they tried to milk and make shows about me, and you know, oh, well, I'm going to sit here until Phil comes on my stream or he lets me on his stream, when there was no chance that was ever going to happen, but people still sent them money. I mean, how dumb can they be, right? But that's what I mean, like, that's literally my interaction. And what's sad about it is, I'll end it with this because I don't want to talk about them anymore. From what I'm to understand, they literally aren't even a gaming podcast anymore, right? Like when I was watching them, when they came back, what was it, February? they were a gaming podcast. And it was about games and pop culture and fun topics. And I liked watching the show at that point because it was entertaining. It was stuff that I was interested in. From what I'm to understand, since I went on that show, they just became so desperate that the entire show changed and turned into politics and drama. Which literally, when the show started, they said that's not what they wanted to do. They outright said no politics, no talk of this, right? We're not gonna discuss this stuff. And then it's like, for some reason, because I was on the show and gave them a giant popularity boost, they realized, well, talking about games and stuff isn't going to maintain any of that popularity, so we have to change the entire format of the show to be toxic political shit. And that's apparently what the show is now, right? It's pretty sad. Anyway, enough about that bullshit. That's as much as I know. I haven't seen a single piece of content. I pay no attention. I go out of my way to do the right thing, you know. But again, Phil, you're trying to act holier than thou. No, I'm just telling you facts. And if you judge it that way, if you're actually judging it that you think that I'm better than them because of what I say, that's a fact. I can't change that fact. I'm not going to lie to you about the things that have happened. I'm not going to make up fantasy situations. You know what I'm saying? Like, anyway. Today's episode 43, is that true? 43 of DSP versus the internet? It is? I thought today was episode 42. Maybe I'm wrong. Let me double check that. We already just talked about it for like a half an hour. It's a waste of everybody's time, including mine. Appreciate the tip. Not going to talk about it any further. By the way, I already answered that question a zillion times. My issue with the Sidescrollers was that it was a bait and switch. It was fair interview and then immediately mistreated after the fact, which wasn't supposed to happen. It was supposed to be fair interview, possibility of a future interview, and now I get to be on the show. That was the agreement, is that do the interview and then you could be a regular guest on the show, as we had talked about previous. But they turned that into a complete lie. They lied about what Friday's content was going to be so they could make money, and they continued to do that for weeks at a time, and then they continued to do it later in the year. So it was completely disingenuous from day one. There was no intention there to have a truly neutral interview. You know what I'm saying? It was, we're going to have an interview, and then we're going to immediately follow that up with a bunch of negativity so that we can benefit. That was never the agreement. Like I've said, with Barbara Walters, when she did all of her giant interviews, and she interviewed people who people saw both positively and negatively, the day after she did a giant interview with someone, right? She nailed this exclusive interview with someone that everyone wanted to hear their interview. The day after the interview, did she immediately go on her own personal show and just crap on the person all day long, completely destroying any kind of, neutrality that she could have had during that interview, and then a bunch of people and sponsors sent her money for it? No, that never happened, because that destroys credibility. That makes it so that you were purposefully leading up to this being a one-sided endeavor so that you could benefit from it. And people with actual integrity don't do that, okay? And the truth is, I'm sure that Barbara Walters many times did not believe her people she interviewed, or thought that the answers they gave were bad or good. But you leave that to the eye of the public to decide. You don't say, so we were the authorities who did the interview and we officially believe it was all bullshit. You've completely destroyed any kind of credibility or neutrality you had when you do that. You make it so that you had an agenda, you pushed that agenda. I mean, right during the damn interview, let's be honest here, during the interview, Adam Krigler outright said during the interview to Craig, it sounds like you don't believe him and you're trying to get him to confess to something. He outright said it during the interview. You can go watch the interview back. It's true. You know that they during that interview never believed a word I said, which they're not supposed to do. It's supposed to be a completely neutral interview, right? And so they had an agenda the whole time. I think what they were trying to do, they wanted to be the people on the internet where they were going to break the story that Phil's been lying all along, and they were the ones to get him to confess to the truth. That's what they wanted. They didn't get that because that's not what happened. I wasn't lying. There was nothing to confess. I was never going to do that. There was no agreement beforehand to anything that they wanted. Oh, just send us a bunch of documents and evidence now. No, we never talked about that. That's not going to happen. Under any circumstance, that will never happen during the show. You're out of your mind, right? But that's what it is. It was all a bait and switch to begin with. That was their agenda to begin with, you know? And you can figure that out by watching it. Just plainly, they admit it during the interview. It's admitted. So, there you go. That interview was the best thing that ever happened to the channel. That interview is the only thing that ever happened to that channel. Literally, they tried months after, right? They had Boogie on the show. They had this person, that person. No one cared. Nobody gives a shit. The only reason anyone cared about them is because they got me, because it was an exclusive. No one had ever had an interview with me in years and years like that, right? So that's why. No one gives a shit about them.